are live. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Respect the Craft. This is episode number 212, and I'm joined here by a very special guest. He is truly a cinematic genius, unpredictable at times. So that's why we're still trying to see how this conversation is going to go. But I'm joined by none other than Jay George. What's going on, brother? Good evening.
Finally, The Rock. What's going on, man? It's good to see you. And
Likewise, Matt. Likewise. It's
yeah,
been a
man,
minute. It's been a while since I've gone to see you in person as well. Finally, I'll be able to see you in good 2 weeks. So it'll be good times. Good times.
feels like
But
my desk is about to fall apart.
hopefully it doesn't before we end this conversation. But as we carry along here, I do have to ask the question I ask everyone that comes on. You heard the name of the podcast, Respect the Craft. So for you, when you hear that term though, the craft, what does that mean to you?
Sometimes I think of a good crafting table like in Minecraft. But a lot of other times I think of the art form and the art that we craft inside the ring, and I assume that's what the name pertains to. Respect the craft.
It's whatever it means to you. That's what I love about the answer here. It can mean whatever. It could be that. I've heard plenty of times that 1996 movie that everyone likes to bring up, but we keep it going here. We keep it going.
The
But
1996 movie, Respect the Craft?
no. Just the craft. That's what they always like to make the joke because there is
Mm,
a movie just called The Craft that was
the
that was made.
Witch movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
They love to bring that up when I ask this question.
Yep.
But let's keep it going here. So now I do want to talk about this. I made the joke about the unpredictable because that's how when I first got to know about Jay George and see Jay George, it was more of that unpredictable side, more of that's what we got to see in and outside of the ring. But tell us, how do we get to now this cinematic genius that we see? How do we start this evolution here? How do we get to the amazing pieces that you're making that we've been seeing in these commercial previews that you've been making?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the reasons um I wanted to come on the podcast specifically too, is because I saw and the way you promoted me, the unpredictable Jay George, and I was like, man, I wonder if you know not so much that I wonder, I just know that there's probably so many people, especially in the New York City area, that maybe they still have this perception of me from 2018 or before. And I was like, nah, we gotta catch up. I dropped the unpredictable. I mean, I'm still very much unpredictable in nature, but I dropped that part of the branding, if you will, you know. And I think that was around 2018, 2019. And a lot of it was, when I started out, I think that was like I don't want to say a crutch, but it gave me something. I knew when I started wrestling, I wanted to have some sort of, I needed to have something like a nickname. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I wanted to be like the Nature Boy or something. I don't know, something like that. And I was using the unpredictable name for various reasons, and it didn't. I feel like as much as that term can define you, it didn't define me. So I had to do a lot of soul searching. You know what I'm saying? And 2018, uh I was like, I gotta really do something. And then I got myself to go train in Germany for a little bit at the WXW Academy. And then because of that, I got to wrestle in China. But then when all that ended, I came back and I was still kind of lost, and I was still trying to figure it out. And then I started training at the Creative Pro Academy. And things kind of, with what happened in 2020, things kind of led to more closed tapings, and there was a lot more freedom. And then honestly, I was like, I knew it was going in a different direction, and then I just kind of stumbled upon this thing that was always a part of me. I went to film school. That was my outside of wrestling, my other interest in filmmaking, making movies, and the two things kind of just gelled together. Long story long.
Like, no, that works. And again, I do apologize for the older branding, but I feel like that's why I wanted to have this conversation too, to see how do we get this change, or how do we have that evolution? Because I've seen definitely a different side of you throughout what you've been doing, especially with Creator Pro, with Wrestle Open, with Beyond in them, and just seeing how that has become a almost just new, very different, but very just rejuvenated Jay George here.
100%. That was the thing when I went to. I needed the rejuvenation. I was spinning my wheels. I felt, and one of the biggest pieces of it, like the biggest like aha moment for me, was when I was in Germany. We did a match. One of the my roommates in Germany was fucking Tim Thatcher, which that's a whole other thing I could talk about. Uh, Amazing person, amazing like experience. But he pointed out. He goes, "I don't know what your gig is. Well, I don't know what your act. You know what I mean? He didn't know what the act was, right? And then that got me kind of like, yeah, okay, I gotta like tune this. I gotta really fine tune this, and then I got obsessed with trying to figure out like who who was I gonna be? What was my branding gonna be? And then for like a short time when I came back, I got into a whole series of adventures with somebody, a very notorious person in this industry, and he suggested I call myself the Thunderheart, and I kind of tried that for a little bit, but yeah, when I went to Creative Pro, like I said, we were doing closed tapings, and I one time I was like, when I started Creative Pro, I was like, maybe it's gonna be like I'm an actor, right? Maybe I'll be like a action movie star, was kind of like my vision. And I did this promo for VXS, Violence and Suffering, right? I had been on the first couple shows, they took me off, and then the show I thought I was going to be on, I wasn't on anymore. There's like a whole shift and the whole change there. And I was like, so like, I took it to heart, so much. I was like, so like worked up about it that I made this promo that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna show them that I'm worthy of being on the show. So I'm gonna do it on my own. And I made this movie trailer promo promoting that I was gonna be at VXS despite the fact I wasn't even booked. And it was a movie trailer. And then that kind of spawned off. We're doing closed tapings at Creator Pro. And then I found this opening where we're 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 doing the in-ring introductions, and I can hear the commentators talking from where I'm standing, and I just go, "Will you shut up? I'm trying to get this shot, and you guys keep talking, blah blah blah." And I was like, "I'm probably gonna get in trouble for doing this. I'm kind of out of line here." But then I was already doing like a movie adjacent thing. They saw that and they were like, "That was great. Keep doing that." And they kind of just spawned from there.
Got you. No, and again, it's improvising from a situation. It's improvising from a situation like that and making it work. To now we see these promos and seeing where you're going with this. Which again, I think it's promoted the Super Bowl more than the NFL has right now with these with these. Again, maybe possibly Super Bowl commercials. We don't know until February 11th gets here. We don't know. One of them might stick. You never know what could happen.
You never know.
But,
Yeah,
uh,
the pressure's on.
there you go. But we got the good brother Coltrane in the chat saying, Jay George, this brother and I go way back. There you go.
That's actually kind of that's funny too, Coltrane, because he's got hashtag dope, and he was doing these and he still does them, these amazing like cinematic style promos. And that's where I actually, you know what, it's funny because that's where I kind of discovered myself, Ray. um I we he would we would shoot these. He offered to help me and do promos with me. And again, I don't know who I am at this point. And I remember kind of, I would get the edit back from his guy and I'd be like, I was like so like I wanted to fine tune every detail, and I was like, I got to do this myself. You know, my director side started coming out. Ooh, sorry, excuse me, started coming out.
Gotcha. Which now I do have to ask that because so when we get to that side of it, now finding yourself and finding what it is to be able to make it work for both just you as a person, but also for the ring. How'd you start getting this side of it now? How'd you start seeing, you know what? I want to be able to fine tune this. I want to be able to edit it this way. Like you start seeing your vision clearer. How do we get there?
I It was always there. Like I went to film school. I have my film degree. I didn't really pursue the film business as much because of wrestling, right? That was always I was always going to go 100% with wrestling.
Okay.
And uh I always did all my own stuff, you know. I always filmed my own promos. I always edited my own promos. Even back then, I was filming and editing promos for other people and making content, you know. I did a documentary about starring Vinny Pacifico wanting to be a florist. That was like in 2016, but it never really melded into my wrestling persona, but it was always kind of there. Like there was always like traces of it, you know. And
Gotcha.
it was just being able to define that, you know.
Gotcha. So it's definitely making it also just it was there, but it wasn't part of the whole thing. It didn't make sense at that time. Like, okay, yeah, you could see it, but it wasn't fully submerged into what you were doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for you, when did that finally click that it's like we need to make it like just let's add everything to it. If I'm doing this full throttle here, well, you know what?
yeah.
Let's backtrack that. So what was it for you though that made you decide this was what you were doing full throttle? What was it that made you decide wrestling was the direction instead of pursuing film and cinema?
Once I knew once I started training that I was like I was gonna. I just knew, you know what I mean. It
Gotcha.
was just a matter of once I started training in wrestling, like that's it. And especially at that time, I was 23. I
Okay.
was I was in film class, and it was like one of the last days, so we're just watching each other's like movies that we worked on all semester, and I get a phone call during the break, and it was from my job at the time, and they were letting me go, and I was like, perfect. I'm gonna get the unemployment, and I'm gonna use that to pay for wrestling school, you know. And that was like my going into my last year of college, so I already knew it was, and like if I would have started wrestling earlier, which you know I've had run-ins with, I would have 100% had dropped out of school or something. I don't know, because then I would have just been too into the wrestling, you
Yeah,
know.
you would have been too focused. Which again, though, that does ask the question now: would you have had the same journey though? Would we have the same Jay George we see today without having that background in studying film and cinema? Would we have the same conversation we're having now?
Yeah,
So
it all happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. You know, I think everything that happens the way it should.
definitely so. And again, now we get to see this cinematic genius. We get to have this conversation, and we get to see how an interesting reaction to usually getting the call that hey, so we're gonna have to let you go. Perfect. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
usually not the reaction someone's gonna get when like, yeah, we're gonna have to let you go.
yeah.
Okay.
It's fucked up. It's real fucked up because I've always been, you know, it's tough because I was always like, I would see people that were coming up with me. They would get like really good, you know, real jobs, you know,
Yeah.
like in the real world, and they'd have these great jobs, and then all of a sudden their drive for wrestling wasn't there.
Yeah.
They would kind of wean away, and then they would just eventually stop wrestling. Meanwhile, they're doing great. You know, they're making six figures in the real life and all this. And then I was like, I can't let myself do that. Get like a crazy good job like that because then I'm not going to want to wrestle in this. It's kind of fucked up because you know I now I'm wondering.
But hey, again, it shows though this was the passion. This had your fire. This now was able something that you're able to merge again two passions of yours because you had that
Yeah.
love for film, you had that love for cinema, and now you're able to merge it with your love for wrestling. So where does that come from though? Where does that love for the business and that made you decide not only do you love it that much that you're a fan of it, but now you want to step through those ropes? Where do we get that from?
That's just, I think, inherent, and it's just magical, and that was just always it was the one thing I was always sure about that I wanted to do when I was a kid, that I wanted to be, and it always found me, you know. So uh it just too all the coincidences were too weird to ignore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have to ask the same when it comes to now the film side of things. What was it that intrigued you about that and having to learn a have deeper knowledge on cinema and film?
That's yeah. I don't know that one again. It's inherent, and it's just I'm trying to think of that moment where, because I remember, like, in high school they had film classes, but I didn't like realize how to like do that and like how to go on it. But I was always, very driven by the entertainment and like outside of just filmmaking and movies, like just taking in like all this media. Like I was always super into comedy and stuff, watching I would watch all the Saturday Night Live reruns they would play on Comedy Central, and I'd watch all the weird shows they would have on Comedy Central, and all the, Simpsons was a big part of my childhood and like a big influence in my life. So then, just like, I think it's just like the entertainment business in general, but there's just something about that. Obviously, being a wrestler and being in the wrestling business, as you would understand, there's some attraction to show business there.
Oh, of course, definitely. There those lines that it does cross, but I feel like it's interesting when you see how now you were able to encompass both of those passions that you had almost outside of each other, now being able to merge them where it is poetic how it fits. So it
Yeah,
worked out for the best.
yeah. I mean, because it's like, what am I gonna say? Oh yeah, I used to go to the movies all the time, and it's like, but we all did.
Yeah,
Everybody
it's
did.
like yeah, everyone definitely. I
I
asked
was
that just because of how I feel like to want to learn a little deeper side of it. Like with wrestling,
yeah,
for most, a lot of people find the love for it, they become fans, but then it's a different thing to want to be like, you know what? I actually do want to step in there. So it's cinema to
yeah,
want to gain that deeper knowledge of it and be able to say, hey, I can make my own movies. There has to be
yeah.
something that just it gets that deeper passion of it, you know?
Yeah, it was just a matter of, like, being able to I would do stuff with, like, I would have cameras maybe, but, like, I never knew how to, like, uh, edit stuff on the computer at the time. I don't wanna date myself either as to how but there's a whole process there, you know? But I I know for sure, when I started in going into college, right, that was when kind of like, okay, yeah, and I'm gonna do I'm gonna do something, and I joined it was like the TV and film club, and we had the TV station and stuff, and then that's kind of where I really started like getting my foot wet with it and like figuring out like, okay, this is something I can do. Because when I originally started in college, I was like, I was looking for some outlet, and I didn't think wrestling at that time for whatever reason was gonna work out. And then I was like, my major was so weird. My major was like music business. I was like, maybe I'll work in the music industry.
Gotcha.
But then I saw the avenue that I was like, oh yeah, I could just take film classes, and then
There we go.
yeah,
Well, again, it's one of those where everything happens for a reason. Who knows? Again, we could have had a whole different Jay George, which possibly could have been more music centric. Who knows?
I guess
Or
so. But
just been
I don't have any music talents. Vince Steele says, one of my favorite workers in the business, Jay George.
there
I'm
you
gonna
go.
say something here real quick because I
Yep,
notice this all the time, and I want to get this out the way. But
of course.
I notice a lot of people, when it comes to my name, they either put a space between the J and the G, or they put a hyphen. Sometimes I see a period. I'm just gonna set the record straight. There's none of that. None of it. It's just JG. Boom, right there. JG, no space.
Yeah. No space, no hyphen.
Dude, it
It
happens
is
a lot. And I'm like, I'm one of those like I'll see a promoter, they'll misspell talent's name wrong, and the talent like gets all passive aggressive on X, and then it's like I don't want to be that guy. It's whatever.
yeah.
Yeah,
So now the record is straight here. Everyone knows.
I I
Just
mean,
in case we're gonna clip this here just so people learn how to spell it correctly and how to put it right. It's right there, JG.
it might be an
As simple
autocorrect thing.
that that that's the excuse a lot of people are gonna use now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I tried to do that, but autocorrect told me I have to space it out.
The weird one is always the hyphen because that's you have to put a little extra effort.
Yeah, and they still
But
just it's there
but
now.
then I do think at one point I did have that hyphen in there, so I don't know. Like I was like our truth.
Uh, it could have been a thing that might be why that might have been
It,
why people started
yeah,
just to again this is why people have to stay up to date. Which if you haven't already, guys, make
yeah.
sure you're following Jay on all of his social media, so that way you stay up to date. Even though now with like the Instagram handle, it's .mp4. They're now going to think you're an MP4 file. Just
Well, that
follow
is
me.
the idea. I essentially am to a lot of people. That's kind of how that comes
Oh,
about, you
right.
know.
But then
Yeah,
For Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, you're at J George the movie. So you're just a movie
yeah.
now. So it's either
That's
you're
just
an MP4 file or you're a
yeah.
movie.
Well, they're both one and the same, and it's I wanted to have J George, and then it's like some like dude on eh, both of them. One of them's inactive on Instagram. The other one is on Twitter, and that's just some like random dude. But he
Yeah.
won't give me the name. I want it.
You got that's it. Just cut the promo on him. Film a whole just cinematic masterpiece on just why you deserve the rightful name. It's
Yeah,
your name. You should have it.
J George is
But
the movie. There you go.
there you go. There you go. Shout out to Vince Steele in the chat, man. But so we now go to this. We start finding this. We start finding the cinematic genius here. How has it been for you, that process of cultivating what you want this look to be, though? Because there's a lot of styles of movie you can do. There's a lot of styles of just cinematic that you could choose with framing everything. What was it for you that made you find this is your vision of it all?
Yeah, man. That's excellent question. I just believe in the magic in the air. No, I mean, are you talking about like a specific look in my
Just finding for you what you think fits, like having your vision for what you felt, like having what it is you want your promos to look like. I can imagine each one is going to be you're going to have a different take to it, but what was it that made it
yeah,
seem, what's the J George touch? Like you can kind of tell with each promo there's going to be that, oh, this is the way he does it,
yeah.
like with
Once
how we mentioned earlier with Coltrane, shout out to him. You could
yeah,
tell when it's a hashtag dope style promo to it, you know what I mean?
yeah. And that's the thing too, is like it's very interesting because like I'm not the only wrestler that's doing a director thing or even Hollywood entertain like there's it's so broad and there's like different people doing different versions of this, right? So and not but then the other thing is in my theory, my belief is that everyone almost everyone in wrestling, right, is a director, right? Everyone is sort of their own director because everyone, like you said, everyone has this vision of what they want to do, how they want to do it. And they have to direct that if they want to take it anywhere. You have to be a good director, right? To make that vision happen. And now, too, with the way fucking how easy it is to edit something on your phone and everything, anyone could kind of can do it, and some people take that initiative, and they do some interesting things. Even I'll we can get into it too as it relates to VPW because you got Jack Tomlinson who's gotten into acting and stuff, right?
Yep.
But even when he was just doing the social media thing, you still have to again, you still have to visualize that, you still have to direct it, You still have to shoot it. You still have to edit it. Um, Drago, who he just put out a promo saying, he's going to put out a documentary, a little mini documentary series for his character development, because now he's not the college guy anymore. He's graduating. He's directing that, right? And now I can't just sit back and be like, they're taking my thing, because they're not. It's just the reality of what this is. So I'm just unveiling a truth in the industry in of itself. I'm like a mirror reflecting back to what society is and to what wrestling is. We're all our own directors of our own destiny. Um, as far as my vision was, as soon as I knew I had to do, there's a couple things I had to do, right? You know what that is?
What was that?
I I knew, one, I had to have something that when I would come out to a show and people in this case, right, that haven't seen me wrestle in a while or never seen me wrestle, I have to have something that as soon as I come out, people know, okay, this is the deal, right?
Okay.
So I had to have the entrance. I would bring a director's chair around with me, to all my shows, and I would come out with the slate, and I would have like I had this vision of what my entrance was going to be like, right? I would direct my entrance before he came out. Now it's like gotten a little, I figured out how to simplify it, because it's like in WWE when uh at first, like, guys debut and they have this like really elaborate
Yeah,
entrance.
great. Yeah.
Like, you know how MVP, he would come out in the tunnel, and then after a while, you kind of, all right, you don't need the tunnel anymore. You know what I mean? Or like, uh, uh, Del Rio would come out with the limo, and then after a while, it was just like, yeah, you could just make your
Yeah,
entrance. It's
just make
fine.
yeah. It's like we shorten the presentation a bit, but it's still like you get the aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So same thing. It's like over time, I've had to, especially because at the time that I'm figuring this character out, it's still the pandemic, kind of like we're still kind of in that little malaise,
Yeah.
So it's like things are a little more convenient, things are a little easier. But then now we're branching out, and it's like, okay, I probably can't bring my director's chair on the airplane. You know, how am I going to do this in Ohio now? So I
Gotcha.
knew that was one part.
Okay.
I had to have I'm going to get that presentation right, and the other part of that was the okay. So now I'm a director. I'm gonna my matches are gonna have movie posters, right? They're gonna have I'm not gonna do promos anymore. I'm gonna do movie trailers, So I knew, because then I would see other people that were doing this, that were directors in wrestling or whatever. They weren't doing that, so I was like, well, that's the one thing I have, is that I'm a real director. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a legitimate real director.
Yeah. No, and that's why I asked, like, what was it for you that finally clicked that you needed something like that, that it sets you apart,
Yeah,
that this isn't just a well, it is again, it's a mixture of both, because it is the character, but it also encompassates who you really are, because you
yeah,
have that background and you're able to do something like this, or you're able to see, you know what, let's add that because that's different and that catches the
yeah,
attention. Because I remember seeing those posters, I'm like, that's a cool idea now, because that adds something else. It's not just the
yeah,
okay, yeah, this match is happening, so and so date, so and so's wrestling, that type of. It's like, oh,
yeah.
this is different. I like
Like
it.
I just put out, I just sent it over now to radio. I put out a movie trailer for my grand debut here
Yep.
for Victory Pro on Saturday, February 17th. There you go. And there you go. Speaking of, you got Drago there. Um, but I also, to that point, speak to that too, is uh at that time at Creative Pro, a big component too, I forgot to mention, the person who told me that I should really go into this direction was Max Caster, and him and I, we're good friends. We always talk about the industry. We always talk about wrestling. We always talk about what to do to highlight ourselves and cultivate our personas and whatnot. And that was the big thing, is it's not a persona, it's who I am. People say, "Oh, I love your gimmick, man. Oh, great." And it's like, oh, it's not a gimmick. This is it, you know.
Gotcha. No, and that's why I said it's the perfect because it encompasses really who you are. Like when we caught up a little bit before this, it has been a while, but getting to see this, it's like it doesn't feel like the this isn't me talking to a character in a sense. It's
Yeah.
just me chatting with you here. It's not the like during that pandemic, we had a few chats on Instagram Live, and it would be quite interesting at times. But
That was just so interesting time. Yeah. Yeah.
it was definitely some
Wild time.
interesting times on those. Shout out to another good friend of ours, Anthony Gangone was there for a few of those. So he
Uh,
also saw the again the unpredictable side of Jay George on those. But
I had my biggest like mental breakdowns in wrestling with Anthony Gangone.
that unfortunately, yeah, that did happen.
Well, I don't know. Wait, hold on. What are you talking?
No,
I'm
I
saying.
was like, what you said mental breakdown. I was like, wait, what?
So, well, no. So to go back
Okay.
to I'm trying to just do a little back and forth here because I don't want to just keep going on tangents here.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But no. So I'll real quick with that when I'm trying to figure out who Jay George is and all this stuff. I had a match
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
with Anthony, and I just remember being so. I never felt so like fucking like who am I? What the fuck? Like what am I doing? Like fundamentally I could do this stuff, but I just got so in my head as to like how do I present myself, you know? How do I come
Gotcha.
out here and like and we're wrestling we're like the first match ever at Titan, right? And I'm like I was the de facto baby face and I just was so out of like my element character wise and I'm trying all this different shit out and I come out and I'm trying to get the crowd going and I'm like the first thing I go, I say, "Let's fucking go!" And then I like stop and I like freeze and I like step back to the corner, and the ref comes up to me. He's like, "It's a family show, don't curse." And I'm just like, "Oh man." I was like so. I was like, because I was like so. I felt so unprofessional. I felt so like just like, oh god, I'm just like trying to find something
Yeah,
here.
you're still
Like,
yeah.
yeah. And then the match was like, I always was like would look forward to wrestling a guy like Anthony. This guy's phenomenal. But then I'm like, I was so in my head about it that it was the match. I on my end wasn't what it could have been because I was there's no meat to it. That was like that's a big learning thing in wrestling is like you gotta have that thing behind you. Otherwise, it just kind of doesn't work, you know?
Definitely. No, and again, it's having that substance to it. It's having finding again what you needed to find, which was that realism, just adding that actual you instead of just
Yeah,
what do I want the character to be? Like, no, who am I in a sense? It's like who truly am I and what can make this work even more and resonate with not only the fans that are watching, but anyone that sees Jay George, what is it that they're gonna see?
yeah, yeah,
So no,
exactly. And especially that's where comes down to that whole entrance and the presentation of like the first thing I when I come out, I need people to know, okay, yeah, this guy, even if they don't know directly, sometimes people are like, it's funny too, even people I've wrestled, they're like, oh yeah, you're like a actor, right? And it's like, no, well, no, it's like a whole different thing, whatever. But the whole thing is they get it that it's they people get the idea,
yeah.
right
No, and
off
again,
the
it's
bat.
as long as that's there, that starts to connect, and then it intrigues because now it's like, okay, now I want to know more. I want to start finding out what is there of Jay George, what's out there, and they start
Yeah,
seeing again the amazing things that you're doing, the masterpieces that you're creating, and it just goes down the rabbit hole there of just okay, there's a lot more than just seeing the presentation of the entrance, and there's a lot more
right.
they can find. So,
Oh
but
yeah.
now I do want to touch on this. You touched on it a little bit. You gave it the introduction there, but let's talk about this and your thoughts going into a no holds bar 6-man
Wait.
tag here. There's a lot going on to this because you're making not only are you making your VPW debut here,
Mhm,
you're going into it in a no holds bar
mhm.
6-man tag brawl as you'll be teaming up with the Delta
Oh,
House
wait.
again.
Cut.
Oh,
Right? I didn't know
so
this was a no holds barred match. Wait a minute.
yeah, you replaced again. Unfortunately, Jack Thomas cannot be there, and yeah, you're taking his place in this no holds bar match.
Fortunately for me. he couldn't make it because I got on the thing. And but see, this is the thing, man. This is what I'm saying. This is where it also, when you have something that people can like understand, it makes it a lot easier sometimes to get figured into things, right?
Yeah.
I'm on this thing because Jack Thomason, another person who's doing now he's getting into acting and stuff like that, and he's even directed uh his own projects. Uh if it weren't, if it weren't for that, they were like, oh, perfect. We can put in this works here with this, and then we could see what happens because now there's a story there. You know what I mean? Um Intense, man. This is gonna be intense. I didn't know. I had no idea it was gonna be a no holds barred match. Jesus.
It's just you gotta love where that's a genuine reaction there, folks. Where he's like,
Yeah,
okay, cool, yeah, it's a
I
6-man tag,
yeah,
and then it's like, no, there's a lot more. Like there's the no holds barred element to it. It's a brawl. So
yeah.
again, it's just gonna be. Then you have on the other side of the ring, it's Shook Crew and then Steven Azure. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you have the Shook Crew who currently Bryce Donovan, it's still a questionable reign because officials are still trying to see who is
A
truly
lot of
rightful.
controversy there.
Yeah, a lot of controversy, including this again. The last minute replacement. I can imagine the Shook Crew and Steven Azure might have an issue with they were scheduled to face Jack, and
Mhm.
now you've been casted in. The director has taken the reins here and decided to act on this situation.
Yeah, man. I get a call from radio and he's like, "Hey, man, want you to come in as Jack Tomlinson's understudy." I was like, "Understudy? Understudy of what? I'm not the understudy. I'm the guy that's sitting in the director's chair. I'm telling him what to do." And that's as simple as that. When I come in, things got changed up. I ain't coming to be his understudy. Although I did do one thing one time where uh I was I wrestled as another wrestler in terms of I wrestled as Erica Lee once, because she
Okay,
couldn't
yeah.
make it to a show. So I kind of took her place, and I was thinking maybe I could do that, but it's bigger than that, This is bigger than that. And it just goes to show too what I'm talking about. Like, he's getting into the acting thing. It's tough to do with wrestling because you got to go full throttle, and he's picking up some acting stuff. And respect to him, he's trying to hone that craft. So he couldn't be there. So I'm perfect to fill into this role here, especially in a match as chaotic as this. And I've been in the ring with every single person in that match, so I have a good idea of what to expect.
There you go. So you already have some tape. You already have knowledge on who's going to be in there. Again, you might have not known what kind of match this was going to be, but you are
Yeah,
the director, so who knows? Maybe you could pull some strings, change the script a little bit. Who knows? You
yeah.
might be able to work some movie magic into this.
Because I'm standing in the ring, and to my left, I got the guy who's graduating. I got the frat star. I got Dante Drago. I got this hot up and comer, Nick Robles. Is that his
Yep,
name?
that is his name.
Uh, they I should know that. Again,
Yeah, that you
I
might want to you might want
trained.
to make sure you're in there before. I think
Yeah,
the no holds
and
barred thing that got to you. That's why you kind of forgot Nick a little bit. It's all good.
And then you got Nick Robles, and he's gonna be like, "Yeah, dude, I'm coming in here to rock and roll, man." And then you got Bobby Orlando, and he's like, "I'm gonna drink a big glass of milk." And then you got Steven Azure, he's like, "I'm gonna get in my pickup truck. I'm gonna listen to some Backstreet Boys." And then you got Bryce Donovan. You got Bryce Donovan standing there, and he's like, I did it for the people. I did it for change. Ah, shut your mouth, you thong wearing fatty. That's what I got to say to that.
VPW, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't gotten your tickets already, make sure you get them now at victoryprowrestling.com. Front row is sold out, but there's still so many great available seats. Get your tickets now. That'll be live in less than 2 weeks. We'll be live in beautiful Bay Shore.
So Bay Shores is that technically in New York City?
That technically would still be Long Island, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
so
Yes.
the streak remains, dude. I was gonna say, so I have not. I don't think I've wrestled in New York proper,
Yeah,
outside of some like these unsanctioned like underground shows.
yeah,
I've not wrestled on a proper New York City show since 2019, maybe, or 2018.
yeah. Well then now,
Extradited.
hey, again, it's a new year, new possibilities. You never know what could happen. 2024 is still very young, so
Yeah.
that,
One thing about you taking control of your destiny. Look, man, I'll be honest. I fucked up a lot. Coming up, and I would get rejected by certain promotions, and I would take it personally. Which uh, I saw one time Robert De Niro was doing a speech, and he said, "In acting, when you don't get a role, don't take that personally because it's not." And I started, uh, that started helping me mature a little bit because uh, I caused a lot of havoc in New York. I guess maybe not, but I did a lot of stupid things, and it cost me a lot a lot of opportunities in New York, but none that I'm missing too badly. But uh, I kind of wanted to just put that out there because I need to kind of atone for that a little bit. I feel you know.
gotcha. No, and this is why I say, like, again, 2024, it's years young, new opportunities could happen. And again, it's a whole different Jay George that we're talking to here. It's a whole different mentality. It's a whole different
Yeah.
experience. Because I do want to talk a little bit about this, if you don't mind, is what was the decision to join Creator Pro and start learning there and training there? Because this is also coming after years of already being in the business as well. So what
Yeah.
made you decide making that switch and being like, I wanna work on my craft a little more? What was it that made you decide, let's hone a little few more skills in here and let's change it up mentally wise?
Yeah, 2018, at the end of 2018, when I go away 2019 to do this international stuff that I kind of like lucked into, and it was cool to do. I needed to get out and all this. But when I came back, so when I was in China, my visa like expired early. They gave me the wrong visa, and I had to leave early because of that to kind of change my plans. Which ended up being a good thing, because if I would have been stuck there during the pandemic, that would have been hell, you know?
Yeah, that definitely would
Um,
have been a whole different experience, unfortunately.
but, it's funny enough, you know who I was roommates with?
For the China trip? No, you told us
In
for
China,
yeah. Who was that?
my man Cooley K, Bufa AO.
Oh, look at that! Look, it will be a reunion and at
Oh,
that
yeah,
same BPW show.
super excited too, man. And it was great because he knew the lay of the land when I got there, so I was, like, not totally lost, you know?
That's awesome.
Um,
There you go.
I think he was there through that, yeah, but when I came back, it like kinda like I was kinda like I was super down in a hole, and I was super lost. I was super Even though I had all this international experience, it didn't really matter because it's like you come back and then it's like, I don't know, everything had just kind of moved on, and I burned a lot of bridges. So I was kind of like spinning my wheels, and I was fortunate enough coming up in the industry. And that's the one thing too, is like when you come up, you never know who you're gonna meet and all this stuff, like and who's gonna become what. I still think like right, you were in that front row crew, right?
For a while, yeah, I was
Yeah,
definitely there
dude.
for a while.
I like think about that all the time of like all you guys now ended up like getting into this and doing your own little part in it, which I'm like, that's super cool to see. And it's also like I'm glad I got to kind of build that relationship with you guys, because then it's like it would have sucked if I had been like a total dick, and then like I have to deal with you guys I didn't get rid of you guys. Now you're not now you're in the thing, you know? So not like I'm glad, like I got to see all you guys grow like that and everything, but like you just never know. So I was so fortunate that I was friends with all the Creative Pro guys for the most part, like early on when I first met them at shows, and I was nice to them, and we all got to like, I was like, oh yeah, these guys are great. So then when I come back, I don't have anywhere to go train, and I'm like, well, this is probably the best spot to go. Obviously, it's like it's people that come out of there tend to come out good. There's good wrestlers there, and it was just I knew that's where I had to be, and uh I knew I would have an easy path, not easy path in, to be honest, because like I had to start all over. Really, this was like, even though I knew everyone there, and I was friends with the fucking trainers, it still was like I felt like, just starting wrestling school over, as weird as that sound.
No, it definitely I can relate to that because it's a whole different teaching system. It's a whole new just environment. So I can
Yeah.
imagine, okay, here we go. And I can imagine at that time you're not trying to be like, "Oh, I already know this." You're coming in like, "Let's have
Yeah.
a fresh slate and let's just see where this takes me," in a
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. Yeah. Like again, even though I had just this, like, in my mind, right? It's like, oh yeah, I just had this like crazy whirlwind experience of like I was in Germany, and I was in China, and I did this, and it doesn't fucking matter. And then on top of that, you're going to a place where the head trainer's fucking uh WWE superstar, uh you don't beat that fucking experience, not for nothing. And then even then, the guys, I always think I think that experience is relative. So even if there's someone that uh if there's someone who, like, oh yeah, they've been wrestling less than I have, but if they're wrestling at like top promotions and they're wrestling 4 times a week, their experience is a little more valuable than mine at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna dismiss anyone just because they've been doing this less. Like, it's all relative.
Oh,
So
definitely. Yeah, it
it was
definitely
easy
makes
to
sense.
kind of come in with that respect of like, hey,
Gotcha.
let's learn, because that's what we're here to do.
Gotcha. So let's into that. So how was that experience then, getting to learn under Brian Myers and getting to just be around that environment where everyone is having that respect and just everyone is trying to get to that next level. And
It was
it's
great.
definitely shown with how the
Yeah.
amazing talent that's come out of that Creator Pro school there.
Yeah, it was, and it was great, and it was challenging at times for me mentally, just because sometimes you would have those bad days, and you're just like, "Fuck, what the hell? What am I doing? How am I? They probably think I'm the shit and all this, and like, but then that was crazy to think about. That was 4 years ago. I have no idea what the hell is going on with time. That nuts to think that was 4 years ago that started. But now, 4 years later, looking back, it's like, oh yeah, you kind of just boom, you kind of did it. You kind of got through the rough bumps, and you kind of made it to the other side, and now you're on a certain level with these guys. Um like, I started my new year. I went from like not being like I had I've watched, Brian obviously coming up and everything and all this, and I really wanted to make sure I got along well with him. That was important to me. I didn't want him to, because you see some of these people that come in and make a fool of themselves, and they get dismissed kind of, and you don't want that.
Yeah, of
um
course.
Now I got to like I get to spend like my I got to start the new year being housemates with Brian in Florida, going to fucking Universal Studios with him, and like and now I have all these cool experiences. There's a whole other thing now, because of the Creator Pro thing. I got to I don't know if you're familiar with the Major Pod, the Major
Yeah,
Wrestling.
I was gonna get into that a little bit because now you've also been a part of that and just the creative process there a bit behind the camera, behind the scenes with that, and
And there
it's
you
a
go. And I was gonna say, I had this whole thing in my head too. I was like,
yeah.
who's the top indie wrestler right now,
I have to give it to Matt Cardona when it comes
right?
to just again presentation and comes to just putting himself out there and making it known. So it's
And you know who produces content for Matt Cardona?
I feel like it might be the person I'm talking to right now.
This guy. So like, think about that,
Yeah.
right? When the fucking top guy in independent wrestling is coming to you to produce his stuff, when he's saying, "I want you to edit my fucking vlog. I want you to help me run my YouTube." Like, what? and then that was like the biggest fucking stamp of approval, and that happened because of my connection with Creative Pro. You know, if it wasn't for fucking I'll say this, man. I don't say this enough. I owe so much. I owe so much to not just Max Caster, but the other person would be Smart Mark Sterling. If it wasn't for that guy, I'd be fucking in the weeds, man. He's had my back. He's looked out for me. He's believed in me. I was producing like lawyer commercials for him for a little bit when he was doing his angle with Wardlow or Jade.
Oh
And again,
wow.
it's like, I did a music video for Max Caster and a ton of stuff I continue to do for Max Caster. And it's like that's like when it becomes that's when this whole I think that's why it works because the director thing is very real to me because it is. And then it's something I'm doing now. I've done highlight videos for like the when the Graysons kind of rebranded to the new Graysons. Uh, I help them with that rebrand and I help put together some content for them, which is a service I'm offering to other wrestlers. By the way, I have to figure out how to do this because I should do more of this where I kind of been helping people like develop character stuff and kind of I don't say I make highlight videos. It's not my because there's a million people that do highlight videos. I make like character reels, promo packages for people, and that's something
There you
I
go. So if you want to
yeah
better your presentation, again, we're gonna pop these up here. Make sure you get into contact with Jay George. Follow him
I
all of his social media right there. And
yeah.
again,
I've been so bashful about it too. Of like, I don't want to say that I'm good, and I'm like, who am I to say this? But then I just said I make content for people that are on TV.
it
I make content for yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll let him, and he's not gonna say it because he doesn't want, but I'll put him over. Like, look at the talent he is working alongside.
Yeah,
Again,
it's
it
like
is a who's who, especially when it comes to not only the independent scene, but when it comes to the scene as a whole
yeah,
of professional wrestling. So, if again you want to make sure your presentation is at a true cinematic, just genius level, contact Jay George today.
yeah, and that's led me to a lot of cool stuff because like I I ended up to a point where I started making more money like doing the behind the scenes stuff in wrestling than the actual wrestling itself, and that's cool. I've been able to pay my rent making content for people.
That's amazing right there. Again, you can imagine it's still merging those two loves because you're still getting to do something for the business, but also you're getting to use that vision and that eye to see what is going to help presentation wise and helping someone else also just grow in themselves as well. So
Yeah,
that's
man.
awesome.
Yeah.
But no, that's perfect. But brother, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here. So I want to start wrapping this up with asking this. Because again, we talked about all the amazing things you have currently going on, coming up in the future. But I do want to ask when it comes to this whole grand scheme of things for Jay George, what is the end goal, brother?
Jesus, I don't know. If truth be told, it feels like that. The end is sometimes it feels a lot closer than you think. Um, Sometimes you feel like it's unattainable, and throughout my time in wrestling, I've slithered with the snakes and I've soared with the eagles and everywhere in between. And I'm just trying to find peace, and I'm still trying to find. I'm still trying to find that ultimate answer. I had this vision in my head of what the end goal was 10 years ago, and I don't know. It's like I had this vision, and it's like I'm losing my sight sometimes. It gets blurry, and and I feel like a plastic sheet floating in the wind. And it's going to be a very interesting year. You know, I still keep my vision board. I still have my places I want to go, and I'll put this out there. One of my biggest goals is to get to a place where I can kind of. I always had this vision of like, oh, this is not act for independent wrestling. It needs to be seen on television, and there's so many cool things I could do with it. And it's scary too because there's been other there's some similar stuff that pops up, and then you just start to get worried, like, oh no, is this going to be what I've been envisioning being done by someone else? But you know, my goal is to get to a spot where people will know who I am and know what I'm doing. And I see a place like TNA Wrestling that's been a goal of mine for a long time, and I'm trying to figure out my way in there, or MLW would be cool to cap off this year. I'm just trying to focus on this year for right now and see what I could, because this is going to be a very interesting year for me.
Gotcha.
There's, but I will say this: there's some cool stuff coming up. There's something cool. You might see me pop up somewhere very unexpected very
Ooh.
soon.
Well
That's what I
then,
do.
there you go. That's what we love to see. And guys, again, if you haven't already, make sure to be able to stay up to date with all things Jay George there. Follow him on all of his social medias right there. Once again, the Instagram. Follow him on Twitter, X, until that guy will give him the handle. That needs to be the next
I-
movie petition there.
that's an end goal, is to get to a point where I could just buy it outright. You ever see that?
There, I have seen a few people just say, "Hey, I'll give you this amount of money. Just give me the handle. That's it.
Like, you got
Just,
to
just
think, when Twitter first started, a bunch of like good names got taken right away,
yeah,
and then because I don't know if The Rock was on there from day one, so someone had to have had that
yeah."
handle at one
Someone,
point,
someone definitely stole the Rock, and it's like,
and then he's like, "Nope, we're taking that." And I don't even think they pay you for that. I think it's not like a website where you could
yeah,
like
you're just,
buy
yeah,
it. I think you could just tell when you have enough money where you could like direct, when you can actually contact someone in those offices, you know, that's when you're legit.
yeah. That's where Jay George wants to get, and that's where a lot of
Yeah.
people I can imagine to get the handles they really want. They just want, hey, Elon, just give me my handle. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, thank you again, brother, for doing this. To everyone watching, thank you, and don't forget, as always, to be wise, be genuine, be real, be better people, respect the craft, and we'll see you guys.